Is that the best that you can do? Living on wasted time. You don't got much time to lose. Living on, living on, living on and on and on and on and on. Do you really believe you are on the safe side? Living on wasted time.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Living the Dream with Travis Spartan. I, of course, am your host, Travis Spartan, and with me right here is master coach and author of Expectation Hangover. It is my incredible honor to be talking to the one and only Christine Hassler today. Christine, how you doing?
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. You were just in Newport. You're just in my neck of the woods recently in an event. How was that? I mean,
it was incredible. It's incredible. It was my friend Lori Harder's event. Lori Harder is an incredible human. One of the things that she's passionate about is tribe, like bringing people together, especially women. She shares that she would always go to events and be that person who would run up to her hotel room on breaks because she was so intimidated and felt awkward. And she really wanted to create a place where women could come together and connect and also be uplifted and grow. And it's an incredible event where connections are facilitated. There's musicians and performers, and then there's also speakers. And I got to speak at it for the second year in a row.
And you were doing live interventions on stage, which I think is so incredibly cool because that's one of the reasons I love your podcast so much, Over and On With It. That's kind of where you really shine the most and what you really love to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
why is that so important to do that on stage with people rather than just kind of just giving them so much more information to kind of steal over?
Well, I think that one thing that the personal growth industry has done to people is put them in awareness paralysis and then self-criticism for not being good enough at personal growth. And what I mean by that is there's so much information. There's so many people who have read so many books and listened to podcasts, and they have awareness. Like they're able to connect dots of, oh, the reason I have commitment issues is because my father abandoned me as a child. That makes sense, but they can't seem to shift it. Right. And so, or that awareness or something simple like the law of attraction. I should think positive thoughts so that my life goes better. But yet they have this inner critic that comes out, or they have a lot of fear. And so then people go into this massive self-judgment that they're not doing quote unquote good enough at personal development because they have the awareness, but nothing is shifting. And that's why integration is so important. And integration only happens when we learn something experientially, when it becomes not just a concept, but we actually get it in our unconscious mind and in ourselves. And so by doing live interventions, two things happen. One, the person on stage actually experiences even more of an integration because they're not just supported by me, but they're supported by the whole entire room. And I only do live interventions on stage when I know I'm going to have a supportive audience because they're holding the space just as much as I am.
Yeah.
So they're able to experience a transformation because when I coach people, I don't just coach concepts, I get them into the feeling. So it may be a feeling of needing to go back and talk to themselves when they were 5. It may be actually experiencing a feeling vulnerably on stage. It may be like dissecting a belief and really understanding what the new, more affirming belief is and feeling that. You know, a big thing I do on stage with people is to stand vulnerably and receive love. Everybody wants love, but we tend to push it away because of our own self-worth. So the person on stage really gets it experientially. And then the audience also, because we're all mirrors, we think we're so different, but we're all so alike. And the audience actually is more likely to experience a shift on the unconscious level because when it's not about us, we actually integrate something deeper, which is why stories are another great teacher. You know, people actually will learn and shift more through a great story than actually information. So the people in the audience also experience that kind of transformation because they're seeing themselves on stage, but their defenses are down because they're not the one on stage. So it's just this beautiful transformation that occurs for everybody in the room. And I love doing it because people get to see what integration really looks like, you know, how we take awareness into actual change.
And I think that's such an important insight right there. And I harp on this all the time, you know, see, we can get so many personal development books, right? We can buy The Art of Happiness. We can buy The Secret, and we can, oh, it's so great. And we put it back in the bookshelf, and it collects dust because we haven't integrated it into our lives. So we're so good, especially this day and age in the social media and information age, of ingesting so much information, but we're not actually metabolizing any of that information.
And I think it can become a distraction too, because the other thing that's hard for most of us is actually to feel our feelings. We want to intellectualize our pain in our past rather than actually go back and feel the feelings that we stuffed inside a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And we can keep compiling more information, and try to inform our way into healing. Mm-hmm. But the only way that we actually heal is when we feel and deal with the emotions that we've kept inside and repressed for so many years.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to heal it, you got to feel it, right?
You got to feel it.
You can't be putting
feel it and deal with it, understand how to shift it.
And I want to get into that. You can't just keep putting glittery unicorn Band-Aids on things that really need to be healed on a deep level. And we do try to do that through these distractions and kind of ways to kind of cope with it, but that aren't actually healing that. You talk a lot about freeing yourself from past emotions and why that's so important, so we can stop recycling the same emotions and actually start to release them. What does that process look like?
Yeah. And the reason why this is important is because the stored emotions keep the beliefs locked in place. And anytime we have like a belief system locked in place, as you know, it creates this neural net in our brain. And that's why it's hard to shift. So if I have a neural net in my brain that I'm not worthy and I don't belong, that was caused by an event in 4th grade when all the girls turned on me and passed a note around saying, don't be Christine Hassler's friend. I've got this neural net that like, I don't belong, people don't like me, and tons of shame and sadness and anger that I basically swallowed when I found that note because I was so humiliated. So growing up, it wouldn't matter how much awareness I had that I belong. It wouldn't matter how many people actually did like me after that. Everything defaulted to, I don't belong, I'm not enough, because I never went back and actually processed that event. Once I went back and processed that event and let myself feel it, like basically connecting to that little 4th grader and with so much compassion, and we all have the ability to do this. We all have the ability to connect to younger parts inside ourselves. And we don't necessarily have to remember all the details. Like a lot of people say, well, I can't remember details from my childhood. I'm like, well, you can remember how you felt. Like most of us can remember how we felt, even if we can't remember details. And so you go back and connect to that little one with so much compassion, and you just say, I'm here. I am here to hear what you're feeling and what you're thinking right now. Just share with me. And you'll start to unlock a kind of a voice from the past of, I feel ashamed. I feel like I did something wrong. I feel alone. I feel scared. And you start to let that younger part feel and talk about what happened while your older self is holding this incredible space of compassion for that younger part. Once we do that, then it's like those feelings they're not so suppressed. Because most of us, we recycle our feelings versus really release them. And what that means is, okay, using my example again, let's say that, now I'm 27 and a friend hurts me. A friend betrays me or ghosts me or something like that. I may cry about that event and think, oh, well, I cried, like I released my feelings. But if I had any kind of judgment on myself while I was crying, like, why am I so upset? I want this to be over. Or if I was analyzing myself, or if I was still blaming myself, and if I wasn't connecting back to the significant event that started this pattern of being rejected by friends, I'm basically just going to recycle the feeling because I'm not getting to the core emotion that I need to get to.
So is that important every time that something like this happens? We get ghosted and we take it very personally. Is it important to really feel that and also go back to the kind of first time that we felt this?
If it continues to happen, yes, because things only continue to happen because we haven't dealt with the core wound. Right, Once you deal with core, I don't get rejected by friends anymore. Once I healed a lot of my stuff with men, I never got ghosted again. All that stuff did happen to me, but outer experience is a reflection of inner reality. So if the same things happen over and over and over again, basically that's your soul seeking to evolve. And so it continues to give you challenging situations so that you're like, oh, well, maybe I need to go back and deal with something here.
You said there was a time where you were getting ghosted by men, and now you just let me know before the show that you're engaged, which congratulations. But I know a lot of people, single people that are listening to this right now, and they feel like they're having these kind of relationship challenges. They've been single for too long. Do you have a story there? Is there some kind of advice that you can give to them?
Do I have a story?
Do you have many? I have hours in the day to hear this.
Yes, I will tell you some stories. I will say though, I just want to clarify one thing. You could you could deal with your core rejection kind of feelings and shift your beliefs around. And someone still could ghost you because there are just people that are immature spiritually and emotionally, and that's the way they deal with things. But you know that you've resolved your own issue around it if you don't get triggered by it. So it's less about the same event happening and more about like your reaction to it. So a lot of times when we heal, it can totally clear it and doesn't happen again. Or if it does happen again, we have an opportunity to respond differently. And if we don't get triggered and don't take it personally, then it's like, oh, wow, I've really moved on from that.
Well, that's our power, isn't it? And it's cultivating a truly unshakable mindset. The circumstances around us can stay the same, but what we can choose to change is our response to it. What most people do is they tend to react to circumstances, and there's no power in that. There's a great Stoic quote that says, "You're not responsible for your first thought. You are responsible for your second thought and your first action." And that little space right there, that mindfulness, that little space right there, just slow yourself down and go, okay, wait a minute. What's a more powerful second thought? That holds such an incredible power.
Yeah, it really does. And it's hard because our brains are wired to be habitual.
Sure.
And when we start breaking patterns, there's a part of us that's like, no, like, why are we doing things differently? The ego and the reptilian brain really fights for a comfort zone of what has worked in the past to protect us. So it is an incredible, powerful space. And it's also, until we all become more practiced at it,
right,
difficult to catch always. So that's why I think so much patience is required in the transformation path. So much patience. I mean, I had my first shrink when I was 11 and my first life coach when I was 21. And it was only, it took me a good decade after seeing a life coach and really consuming personal growth to really feel like, wow, like things really are different inside of me. And I'm not saying it has to take a decade for everyone, but we're always evolving, we're human. There's always things to learn and to grow, but with more tools and more awareness, the time that we spend in the challenging moments becomes shorter. Yeah. So back to your question. So I had relationships have been one of my greatest teachers. I had a fiance that broke up with me 6 months before our wedding in my 20s. And then I met someone and got married to him, got a divorce at 31. So I really struggled a lot in the heart department. And then after my divorce, I spent a couple years not really dating because I had been in a relationship since I was 17 with different people. And then I really wanted to fall in love and find my soulmate and really find someone that I could share my life with. And it took a really long time, like 8 years to find that person. And in the meantime, I had very different dating experiences. And one of the things that kept repeating from me was, okay, so since I was teased and a super late bloomer, I was the geeky girl. I always wanted to be part of the popular crowd. And I'd always have a crush on the popular guy. There's always like a popular guy in class. And he wouldn't even know I existed, but I just had this massive crush. And so I formed a story that I could never get that guy. And so in my 30s, when I was dating, my early 30s, when I was dating around, I would go after that archetype. I would go after like the popular guy archetype, the super good looking, super charismatic, but also very emotionally unavailable man.
This sounds so much like my own story. I'm just getting chills. I was the same way. Like I was doing the same thing. Okay. I'm like on the edge of I'm grabbing the popcorn right now.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. And then, so I'd go after them and then they'd like me. And I'd be like, oh my God, it's finally happening. Like the guy I always wanted finally likes me back. And I get so excited and like obsessed, kind of checking my phone every 5 minutes. Like, did they text? And, we'd go out, we'd have this incredible chemistry and the physical part would be amazing. And then month, 2 months, maybe 3 months in, they'd start to pull back. I wouldn't hear from them. The response to texts would get longer. And then they just pull away. And some of the things I heard was, I'm not ready. I don't think we're a fit. One guy actually told me I was too emotionally stable. Okay. Yeah, literally, I'm quoting him. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yep. And then what would happen is it felt like a week later, they would be with someone. Like they'd have a girlfriend. And from my point of view, that girlfriend was always a hot mess. I'd be like, what? Like how? Like, I don't understand. And it would just rattle all of my self-confidence and self-esteem and honestly break my heart because I would let myself really like these men. And, there was so much learning in that. One, there was still a part of me that was outsourcing my self-worth and thought like, if I was chosen by that popular guy archetype, then I'd finally be worthy, as a woman. So there was like an old wounded teenager in there who was picking my men, and you never want your teenager to pick your dates, especially in your 30s.
Oh my God, I can only imagine,
not
right?
a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it also taught me I was really seeking the wrong things in who I was dating. I was seeking more from a place of ego validation than what my heart and soul really, truly desired and needed. So it was a value check for me too, of like, what's important, the way this looks on paper, the way this it was like, there was some part of me that was like, if I could have the guy that every other girl wants, then I'll finally like matter in the world. Then I'll finally be confident. And I realized what a bunch of bullshit that was and how I was really betraying myself. And I wasn't being honest with myself and what I wanted. And I was compromising my values and I was allowing myself to be treated not that great, to be quite honest with you. And so it was a lesson in becoming a great partner to myself. And after that experience happened over and over and over again, I decided to have different boundaries and to really follow my values. And more than anything, become a really good partner to myself instead of waiting for a man to choose me, or to make me feel worthy, or to make me feel like I belonged, or to make me feel sexy or beautiful or desirable or whatever the list may be. I'm like, I am going to treat myself the way that I long to be treated.
Right. And because you weren't, it sounds like, because you weren't having that, you sought that validation, always checking your phone. Today message me, and you're getting very clingy, right? It sounds like the minute that you kind of stepped into your own personal power and fell in love with yourself. And I think great relationships happen when you have two people who are full with their own spirit.
Yeah.
And those come together, and that's a synergy that's unstoppable. When either person comes from a place of need, like I hate that. And I always talk about this. I always do it. I've never even seen the movie, but Jerry Maguire, you complete me. I'm just like, that is the worst thing you can say.
Mm-hmm. So, it really is. And even though I wasn't acting clingy outwardly, right? Like I played it cool, I was like cool as a cucumber, but inside I was a mess. So, and people can feel energy. Mm-hmm. So even if I wasn't outwardly expressing like a clinginess on some level where they were conscious of it or not, they could feel it. So, and that was important for me to own too. And also to go, well, because I hear a lot of people go, oh, I screwed it up. Like I pushed it away because I sabotaged or I felt my energy or something like that. And what I truly know to be true, and I believe this to the depths of my being, is that you can't mess up something that is in highest alignment with your soul's growth. You can't.
Everybody needs to slow down, pause this podcast, pull your car over on the side of the road, put away the weights right now, and write that down. Can you say that again?
I hope so. Let's see.
That was brilliant.
You really cannot mess up something that's in alignment with your soul's highest destiny and calling. You can't. Man, it's going to happen.
I just want to put that on a plate and serve that to everybody right now, because that is so deeply profound.
Mm-hmm. It's reassuring too to know that, and to know that things that quote unquote didn't work, they worked in terms of what they were supposed to teach you. And every relationship teaches us valuable lessons. And I really believe what you said, Travis, like, when you're someone who isn't looking for someone else to fill any void inside of you or to make you feel a certain way, when you're truly looking for someone to grow with, someone that shares your values, someone where you can share your life with and really like values growth as much as you do, then it's actually easy. There's none of the games. When I eventually met my now fiance, we've had our bumps, like we're human and we're in a conscious relationship and there's been growth spurts, of course, but there was never any murkiness about where we stood. Like in the beginning of the relationship, we were coming together. Like he was commitment ready. He was super clear. Actually, when we were introduced, my friend was like, let me introduce you. Actually, she said, let me find out if he's single. And I said, please don't ask him if he's single, in air quotes. I said, I've had my share of single guys and I'm over it. Find out if he's commitment ready. Because the other thing I learned about men, especially for the ladies listening out there,
I know.
is until a man is commitment ready, like super clear on like he is ready and he wants it, it doesn't feel like a should or an obligation or whatever, just don't even bother. Because for men, and this is a generality and I know there are exceptions, but what I've seen, and I'm curious what you would say, Travis, is that for men, it is so much about timing and it is so much about really being commitment ready.
Absolutely, 125%. I think you put that in words that are pretty perfect there.
Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of women who waste a lot of time and a lot of money on therapy when they're with a guy who's like 1 foot in, 1 foot out and is like, oh, I don't know. And
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. And she's like, but I'm almost 35 and I want to get married. And it's just, it makes my stomach turn to knots. And it doesn't have to be that way because I know a lot of men, including Stefanos, who struggled with commitment issues. And he shares publicly struggled with infidelity in the past. But he did his work and he really got to the point in his own evolution where he's like, I want a conscious relationship. And he says this, he's like, I actually experienced more freedom in our commitment than he did single because it's a value-based conscious relationship.
Yeah, sure. And I always say this, and this I've never put this into relationship terms, but I always say stability creates the foundations for freedom.
I love the way you said that.
Yeah. And it's such a distinction there that most people kind of miss.
It really is. I mean, think about, I don't have kids yet. Do you have kids?
No, not yet.
Yeah. So I think about it in terms of parenting. Like you see kids who have a stable home. You know, it's not rigid in terms of super strict, but there's stability. There's, mom and dad, there's dinner at a certain time. They know what their bed is like. There's some kind of routine. And those kids are often the most free in terms of their creative expression and their enthusiasm and their personality and their confidence and everything. And it's because that stability and that foundation gives them roots so they really feel like they can fly.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Christine, you're really big on spirituality. Why do you think having a healthy spiritual life is so important?
I am. And I also want to share, like, I'm someone, like my version of meditation is just sitting while thinking about a lot of things. So
you do the Dalai Lama form. Dalai Lama does that actually.
So yes, I would call myself a spiritual person, but I also really struggle with the mind a lot of the time.
Doesn't everybody though?
Doesn't it? I just never want to give the false image that like I sit in these meditations and talk to angels and like
sure. you're
hear the voice of God.
You're a guru on the top of a Himalayan peak mountaintop sitting in full lotus. You get the answers to life and everything.
Yeah. Hey, it's easy to be a guru when you're in the mountains with that other human. It's like you can totally.
I was like, you ever drive a car in LA traffic?
There you go.
And it's easy to be enlightened in a cave in Tibet. Come to LA and drive around a little bit.
Exactly.
How enlightened you are.
Oh, I love that you just said that because I'm in LA right now. I used to live here. I live in San Diego now. And we were at Air One, which is like, my favorite grocery store. It's also so expensive, but, and the parking lot is just, it's just a cluster. And so I was going to get a parking spot and I was driving because Stefanos was working on some stuff in the car. And I went to go turn around and this big gas guzzling, huge Jeep thing just like completely cuts me off and like goes into this parking lot and gives me this like awful look. And Stefanos just wanted to get out and like punch the guy. And I had to be like, stay in the car, stay in the car. Choose me right now, not this fight. And we were driving off and I'm like, babe, like this is our opportunity. Like we are probably the more conscious out of this, situation. And it's actually our responsibility right now to choose the high road.
Yeah. And in those challenging moments are incredible opportunities to practice who you are at your highest self, to practice these skills, right? Such a great opportunity. Exactly. You just reminded me a few days ago, I'm coming out of the gym and I can't make this stuff up. And I laughed. And this shows you how far I've come in because I used to have like road rage, back years ago. And this girl cut me off. And I think, she was obviously clearly upset and yelling or something. And I see on the back, she has a coexist sticker on her car. I started laughing. I'm like, you can't make this up, man. Like, I think she's probably coming out of the gym doing yoga or something. Who knows? I don't know. So
Yeah. Well, and, to me, it's like spirituality is to understand we're spiritual beings having a human experience, to choose the high road as often as we can, to know that everything happens for us, not to us, and also to know we're co-creators. That's been a big part of my spiritual practice because I'm a recovering overachiever. I like control. I'm a Virgo. I was on my own for so many years. I'm an entrepreneur. So I can really get into the illusion that like, I just make things happen and I have control over my universe. And spirituality to me is also remembering I'm actually a co-creator. And one, control is an illusion. And two, if I cling to the illusion of control too tightly, then I'm actually going to block or delay what truly are the next steps from a most aligned path. So back to like, you can't screw up your destiny. And if something's meant to be, it will be. That's true. And I do think, I'm not a guru, but I do think we can affect the timing of things. If we don't have some kind of spiritual practice that reminds us we are connected to something greater, we are one, and there is a force that if we work with it, then not only is life a lot easier and more grateful, but we're more likely to take steps that are most aligned with our unique purpose on the planet.
That's a very Taoist philosophy.
Is it?
Yeah, very much. I mean, it's almost, and I think what I'm hearing is there's a difference between going with the flow and swimming with the flow. Right. And so what's that line look like? You talk about, there's a time and there's, everything's aligned with our highest self. And how much control do we have over that, or maybe expediting that or getting there quicker, as you said?
Well, I do think we have control and discernment over what you said earlier, how we choose to respond in any situation. And to be honest, I really don't know. I think it's something we have to feel into. I feel into it by, all right, like kind of looking at how do things feel? Do things feel like a healthy degree of challenge, but somewhat effortlessly? Or do I feel like I'm pushing a 50-pound boulder up a mountain? Or do I feel like I'm on a steady hike? Like I can do the steady hike. That's great. And every once in a while, you kind of like pull over and enjoy the view. But if I feel like I'm pushing something really hard, then to me, I know it's not the right path. I got to either adjust my response, or I've got to just take a pause or give it up and be willing to be in that period of uncertainty. I think that's what blocks most people from really, what's better, going with the flow or swimming with the flow?
What would I say?
Yeah.
But it's, oh man, that's a great question. I think probably swimming, because the river of life's guiding you one way, I think, a certain way. And there's
so you're that's what I would think too, because you're participatory, you're like, you're swimming with the flow.
You get caught up in that thing, like go with the flow. And it's just kind of like, well, it misconstrues as very like kind of lazy way of living. Swimming with the flow is kind of, you have to participate and you have to notice where the river's taking you and not push against that rock that keeps pushing back at you. Life it doesn't put rocks in that river of life to make your life a living hell. It puts them in there to show you a better, different, easier way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think this is where acceptance is so important. And well, let me bookmark that and finish what I was saying about uncertainty is that in swimming with the flow, I feel like sometimes the flow takes us into uncertainty and kind of the in-between. We might be in between relationships. We may be in between money coming in. We may be in between career opportunity. Who knows what the in-between is? And another part of spirituality, I think, is being willing to be in the uncertainty, being willing to be in the complete unknown and really have faith that you're still in the flow. Because sometimes we can confuse, I'm in the flow because everything's working. Right. Well, you can still be in the flow if things are not working, because maybe that's part of your flow is you need to learn through this challenge or you need to learn through this uncertainty. Yeah. And then when we can come into acceptance, not like, oh my gosh, I love that I just got my heart broken, but more I accept right now that I'm sad.
Oh, man.
Like that's the flow I'm in. I accept right now I'm in a grieving process.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Acceptance. There's a rhythm to life.
Yeah.
Things aren't going to be good or, the way you want them all the time. They're not going to be crap all the time. Life, as I say, it's an adventure. It's not a paid tour. Mm-hmm. You got to be willing to go through some of those hurdles. So what do you believe is the key to happiness?
Well, first of all, I don't think happiness is a sustainable state. I don't think any of us should put the expectation or desire on ourselves that we should be happy all the time, because as humans, we go through a variety of different feelings. So I strive more for peacefulness.
Can you talk about that distinction?
Yeah. So to me, happy is like, it's an emotion and it's an uplifted emotion. But if I was happy all the time, I wouldn't grow as much as I would. Not that I want to like struggle and suffer, but I actually don't think that feeling angry or frustrated or ashamed or nervous sometimes is bad. Like, let me give you an example. So I told you yesterday, I spoke to 500 women, an amazing event. I was so nervous before I got on stage. I've spoke for 15 years. And the more excited I am about it, the more nervous I am. I wasn't happy before I was getting up on that stage at all. And I wasn't happy the day before. That wasn't my primary emotion. Sure, I was grateful to be there. Sure, I was excited. Sure, I felt all those other things. But the emotion that I felt was nervousness, anticipation, those kinds of things. And that's great, because that diversity of feeling experiences helps me grow and helps me show up in different ways. You know, I had Stephanos and I, we don't fight too much. We had a little tiff a couple weeks ago, and I was angry. I was pissed off. I was scared, but I got to swim in that for a little bit and learn what I could. And it evolved our relationship. And what I have found is that even when I'm angry or upset or nervous, I can actually find a state of peace within that. And the peace comes from acceptance.
Yeah.
And the peace comes from finding a place deep inside of me that is more neutral. Like I equate peace to equanimity, to neutrality, just to being so present in the moment that there's almost nothing. And being able to get to that space, I feel, is sort of more what, I don't want to say the goal is as a human, but in a lot of ways, like what evolution is really about, is getting to that equanimity. So maybe some people call it happiness, but I would say it's more about peace.
Yeah, and I think equanimity is such a powerful way to put that. And equanimity, that simple act of being mindful and, you know, practicing equanimity has truly, truly, Christine, impacted my life in such a profound way. And I think that's actually, you know, a very important distinction to make.
Yeah. And I love that you said practice.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Practice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because, you know, when somebody with a coexist sticker cuts you off in the middle of the, you know, it's a bit hard to practice equanimity, right?
Yeah. So you just want to practice like shooting your middle finger up. That's what you want to
right.
at home, or calling her out on her hypocriticism or hypocrite. What do you call it? What is it? Hypocriticism?
Is that a word? We made it up.
Hypocrite? I don't know. Yeah. Obviously I need a dictionary.
What is a book that you love, and maybe what you got out of that book?
You know, I always go to The Power of Now because it was my first, but the book I'm currently obsessed with, and Travis, I think you will geek out on this book, is The 5 Personality Patterns. Because what I'm learning so much in my work with people and myself is that we all basically have these personality patterns or really defense structures that we go into whenever we're in overwhelm. That's actually not our natural state. It's not something like an Enneagram or any of those kind of things. It's more identifying the protective patterning that we've developed that comes up anytime we're in stress or overwhelm. And it's not you. It's not who we are. It's just a system that was developed in response to basically trauma or any challenging situation. And this is something I teach too. I call it compensatory strategies. But this book, what I love about it is that it's based on like so much research, and it's evolved. It's been iterated over different people's work, and it just connects so many dots because, you know, one of my friends, Terry Cole, I don't know if you know her. She talks about it's not magic, it's psychology. You know, when we really like understand psychology and understand how our psyche works, I find it can be easier to change because we're like, oh, like this is kind of my strategy. This is my personality pattern. And we have an understanding of it, then it's even easier to shift. And I know I sound like I'm contradicting myself because in the beginning I was like, oh, awareness isn't enough. But this book takes it deeper than awareness because it actually teaches you how to upgrade your nervous system so that you don't go into those default strategies anymore.
Oof. Yeah, that's a kind of the awareness is the first kind of probably the most important step. Understanding where that comes from, or where these patterns come from, is such an awakening kind of moment, like an aha moment. It's so much easier to take control of that once you just simply recognize it, right?
Well, yeah, and it's very specific. I think a lot of personal growth information is too generic. So we might both read a book, Travis, and like your background and what's happened to you is different than me. And so to apply sort of this is the way people respond to certain things to everyone makes zero sense to me. And so that's why I love books like this that help people understand, why their response to something may be different than someone else's. And it also, I think, is very helpful tool in relationship. Like, just like we want to know what someone's love language is, I think it's important to know what someone's like stress response patterning is, and like what pattern they go into when they get overwhelmed. Do they withdraw? Do they kind of merge and get codependent and kind of take on all the emotions? Do they get aggressive? And knowing what their pattern is in addition to yours, I think is a great tool, because then again, we're back to understanding and awareness, which then can lead to the integration and change.
Yeah, it's just like love languages almost, right? Wow, they are showing me that they love me. They're just using a different language that I don't really speak.
Exactly.
That's a book. I probably have not gifted more copies of that book than I can even count. The 5 love languages, right? You guys need to read this book. You know, what's your love language?
So simple, but so powerful.
In The Power of Now you mentioned, I'm actually rereading that for maybe the 3rd time right now. What was the big thing that you took away from that?
Well, it was the first really personal growth book I read, so it just blew my mind, you know, like just like, again, so simple, but yet so profound. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is that like the light bulb went off for me and like, oh, wow, I have a choice. Like I had never really had the awareness that I had a choice to be present, like, because I really never experienced being present.
Yeah, that was probably my biggest, my introduction to personal development as well. That was my big going, you guys, I have a choice. I can choose. Like I can choose how I want to show up in the world, what I want to create, how I feel. And that was through a book, The Art of Happiness, which is just incredible. If you can have dinner with one person, living or dead, fictional or non-fictional, who would it be?
Well, I would want both Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Can I have them as a pair, like a twofer?
That sounds like a dinner party for sure. What would you ask them?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have a lot of questions for Mary because she's been very left out of the story. And I'd ask her lots of questions about the power of the feminine, because I think we as women are just beginning to remember the power of the divine feminine. And I'd ask her, how do we help the masculine at this point? Because I feel everyone's like, oh, the masculine paradigm's been running the world. Well, it's been the wounded masculine. I don't really think we've seen healthy masculinity for thousands and thousands of years, you know, if ever. So I would definitely ask her that. And then I would just say, teach me, just share, tell me stories. I would just want them to tell me lots of stories.
And what do you think her answer would be to that question? How do we help
I have no
her?
idea. That's why I need a dinner party.
Oh man.
I have no idea. But I think part of it would be, and this is something I'm finding in my work inside of me, is number one, coming into harmony with the masculine and feminine inside of me as a woman, like knowing that I have both and trusting that it's okay for my feminine to lead and my masculine to play a more supportive role. Like, because I think women have allowed our masculine to lead too much strictly because it's been adaptive. You know, we came into more of a man's world, and it's like, all right, well, if this is a man's world, I guess I better be more like a man. Sure. And the feminist movement was so beautiful in so many ways. And a lot of what happened is women came into more of the workforce, and because they needed to adapt, led more with their masculine. So I think that she'd probably teach me a little bit about that, about like how to tap into my feminine superpowers even more, because femininity, I think we're limited in our understanding of it. It seems to be, oh, feminine is the flowy part and the creative part and the receptivity part. Well, the feminine is also super fierce and an incredible creator and very discerning. And there's a warrior woman in the feminine as well. So I think that's important for us women to tap into, because when we're really in our feminine power, then that unconsciously gives men to be more in their healthy power, because for so many years we've both been in our shadow. You know, the feminine has her shadow too. You know, like manipulation could be one of them, or playing more the seductress to get something. Like there are lots of different things. And so that brings forward the masculine shadow. So the more we're in our healthy feminine, I think the more that we can give men permission to do the same. And then I also think we need to forgive each other. And women need to forgive men and women, and men need to forgive women and men. And we need to stop blaming and pointing fingers and really create a space where also men can share their pain, because I am in no means condoning, infidelity or aggressive behavior or any of those things. And also I know those things come from wounding. That's not truly who men are, right? Yeah. It comes from wounding. So we need to be able to eventually get to a point when we can forgive that. And, I run a huge women's retreat. It's coming up in a week. And one of the things I do with the women is a massive anger burn, like to help us get our rage and our emotion, our anger out, not just the masculine, but just whatever we're angry about. And that's the other thing I think is important for us to do as women, is to let ourselves feel our feelings, move through the emotions so that we can eventually get to the forgiveness and create a different dynamic, not only between the genders, but just a different dynamic in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Beautiful. If you can say one thing to the world in one sentence, and I know this is so difficult, what would it be?
Let me think. One thing to the entire world?
In one sentence.
You are enough.
You are enough. Beautiful. You are enough. Mm-hmm. What's next for you? What do you got going on?
Next, well, I go to South by Southwest, which I'm really excited about, in Austin.
Really? How fun.
Yeah. I'm taking a big entrepreneurial girl tribe. We're going there, about 6 of us.
Oh, watch out, Austin.
I know. It should be fun. And then I have my big retreat that is coming up, and I've got another retreat in Hawaii that's coming up, and I'm writing my next book, and I'm getting married, and
that's so exciting.
So much fun stuff on the horizon.
What's your next book about? Or can you share that yet?
It is a book about, I'm not sharing the title yet because it's like a baby name. It's a really good title. But it's a book for women primarily in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, single, and kind of going, what is going on? Like, what's going on with men? What's going on with dating? Why is it so hard? Why am I still single? I don't want to call it a dating and relationship book because it's about so much more about that than that. But what I have learned from my own experience is that we're changing dynamics between the masculine and feminine. And so many women are going through this initiation where they're single for longer than they want to be. And the book is for those women.
Oh, man, I can't wait to read that.
I can't wait to finish it.
I hear you. That sounds like a book I'm going to be gifting to a lot of women.
Great.
Where can the world find you? Website, social media, all that fun stuff?
Sure. So if you go to ChristineHassler.com, you can opt in for my free coaching assessment. My favorite social media platform is Instagram, and it's Christine Hassler there. And I have lots of, online courses. You can check out the podcast over at Non With It, and maybe come to a retreat with me. My Hawaii retreat is the first retreat ever I'm doing for men and women, because I'm really passionate about healing this masculine, feminine inside of us and with each other. So it's the first retreat where I'm welcoming men and couples in as well.
When is this?
It's in September 8th through 13th.
Oh, man. I got to get on that.
Yeah, I would love to have you.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, thank you so much for being on. I always on the show, I talk about having campfire conversations, profound, philosophical, and enlightening conversations. And I truly feel like this is one of the best ones I've had. So thanks so much for your time and for being on and sharing your wisdom today.
It's truly my pleasure. Thank you for all the work you're doing in the world.
Absolutely. Onwards and upwards, everyone. Hey guys, it's me, Travis Spartan. If you want to learn more about living the dream with Travis Spartan, visit us at speakingtotheheart.org and at iTunes.